Please welcome, for the keynote address, the highest-ranking Greek American in the U.S. Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Andrew Poppas.
Γεια σας, Patriotis. What an honor to be here today. But before I go forward, it's hard enough to sing one national anthem, let alone singing two, and what a beautiful voice. So congratulations. Very well done. And as we stand here, it's an honor, as I said, to be here, just because the men that we're going to honor today and the stories that they tell, it's reflective of all, not only Greek Americans, but those who have served, and the stories that they tell and the commitment and the sacrifice. But one of the things I want to highlight, and we've seen that, as we tell these stories, we have to realize in 33 years in uniform, I've come to accept that it's not just ourselves that do this, that there's those that support us. And it was actually Eisenhower who said, it has to be the portion of any man, humility, that receives a claim that's been earned in the blood and sacrifice of his soldiers and his friends. And I think especially today, as we reflect upon the 28th back in 1940, and those that are here today, that those brothers and sisters of ours that are serving in arms, that our family and our friends that support us every day, we wouldn't be here without them. And to Mike and Andrew Montos, thank you very much. I'm honored that you asked me to speak here today, and for all the incredible work that you do with the Ochi Foundation, the devotion that you have to the Greek American community, and it's not easy to put on an event like this, especially downtown D.C. right here by the monument. And to the families of the Greek Americans that we're going to honor today, 3 men who embody the true spirit and the lasting spirit of Ochi Day. Thank you for being here and letting us honor them. I know very well the story of Ochi Day. For my father was 8 years old, a little boy in Patras, on the day that this took place, when at 03 in the morning, the Italian ambassador to Greece knocked on the door of the Prime Minister Metaxas. And there he relayed a simple but very stunning ultimatum, that you will allow the Axis forces to enter Greece, you'll allow them to occupy strategic positions, or you must prepare for war. Unfazed, stoic, Metaxas responded in a very simple and single word, Ochi. It resonated throughout the country, and soon after, the Greek troops, they attacked up in the northwest portion along the border. But word quickly spread of Metaxas and his staunch denial. And as the Greeks poured into the streets, you could hear Ochi echo throughout the countryside. And as the Italian forces invaded, it was the Greek army that not only blunted that offensive, but actually pushed them back through Albania, back into Italy itself. Held for almost 6 months from that initial attack and onslaught. And it was this toughness, it was this bravery, it was this refusal to submit to the evil that forced the Nazis to actually have to commit their forces to not only support but actually rescue those Italian forces. And the importance of that, as they committed them, that in doing so it delayed their Operation Barbarossa, which was the invasion into Russia. It delayed it for over 6 weeks as the Greeks held out. And that operation, that delay, as we all well know, led to the future capitulation of the German and destruction of the German army on that eastern front, as an early winter came in, and they were held outside of Moscow. The Greeks held back and changed the course of the war. And it was actually in doing so, in witnessing the grit of the Greeks, Winston Churchill himself said that we're not going to say that the Greeks fight like heroes, but it's that the heroes fight like the Greeks. Now, I want to tell you a quick story about one such hero who fought in that war. And it really starts out with this iconic photo. I remember as a young man and as I grew up and I wanted to be a soldier, this photo, it's burned in my memory. And I remember it was an image in Life magazine. And it was taken by a photojournalist named Eugene Smith. I wish I had it up. You'd remember it if you saw it. But it's an olive-skinned young man. And he's got a furrowed brow and a very square jaw. And he's peering over his shoulder, and he's got a cigarette clenched between his teeth, and just a very steel look about him. And I looked at that, and I thought, that is the American soldier. Hell, I almost took up smoking because of it. But years later, what I found out is that young soldier in the photo, he came from Kefalonia, Greece. And while he wasn't in Greece on Ochi Day, he truly had an incredible journey, and he became the face of the American soldier of World War II. Because back in 1936, Angelo Clonis, he stowed away on a ship at the young age of 15. 15. Took him to Los Angeles, where he worked a number of odd jobs. He eventually ended up in New Mexico in a small Greek community. And then on that chilly Sunday morning, he learned that the attacks on Pearl Harbor. And the first thing Angelo did is he attempted to join the Marines. Not the best decision. But he couldn't, because the Marines wouldn't accept him because he wasn't a U.S. citizen. So, rejected, he came to the Army, who was much more welcoming. And there he became a Ranger. Here, Angelo, he fought across Normandy, he fought through Belgium, he fought across Germany. And because one theater of war wasn't enough for this man, he moved over to the South Pacific, where he continued to fight. And it was in Saipan, at the end of that battle, where this photo was taken. Angelo, the face of the war, Greek-American. And because of his service, he received his citizenship. He returned back home to New Mexico, married his wife, Kiki, had 3 children. And it was back then in 1971, he had earned enough money. He and his wife bought a bar that's still open today. Angelo represents to us that this is the American dream. It truly is. And I look at my own father in the same way. A teenager who crosses the ocean. He comes to America for greater opportunity, the promise of betterment. He serves his new country. He served it in that dreadful war. He returns to build a life with his citizenship. He raises a family, and he invests in his own community. The same thing that you see these 3 gentlemen behind me that we're honoring today did. And Clonis, with that Greek warrior blood flowing through his veins, as he continued to move forward, he gave his heart and his soul to this country, America. And all 3 of today's recipients, I had the honor to talk to before, inspirational stories, inspirational in all that they've accomplished. Each one demonstrates that same commitment, that same sacrifice, that selfless service that I referenced from that picture. Mr. Bentas, who I love, he's a child of Massachusetts, grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts. And his parents immigrated right at the end of World War I. Little did they know that as he grew up, he was going to fight in the second. But when he turned 18, that's exactly what he did. And that spring of 1943, he enlisted in the Air Force. All he wanted to do was join the OSS and go to Greece. But in the Air Corps' infinite wisdom, they said, no, you're going to come train with us. And he trained in Italy, and he's preparing. And what I found out, wherever he goes, he shows up in Europe, and the Germans capitulate. That's a hell of a way to influence a fight. So they bring him back to the States. There's still a war going on. He asks again to go to become part of the OSS. At that point, we were pulling out of our elements in Europe. And before we could send him to Japan, the Japanese capitulated also. And he ended up right across the river here in Arlington Hall in a cryptography. Commitment to this army. Commitment to his cause. Ready to fight. 18, he commits himself. And later, in the future wars, you see Greek Americans still stood ready to fight for this country. Pete Vergados, in uniform now. I figure he should have been wearing a flight suit. I think he flew in himself today. Also a son of Massachusetts. He flew the B-52. But as the war in Vietnam continued to grow, he volunteered to fight in that fight. But realizing there weren't many B-52s, he continued to train. They trained him on the F-100, on the Bird Dog, the Cessna, the Ode-1, so he could get forward. He also trained as a tactical controller from the ground and in the air. That's right up in the fight. And then in 68, he deployed to Vietnam. And there he fought along with the 4th Infantry Division and the 173rd Airborne Brigade, up there at the front of the fight, committed to excellence, serving his country, setting the standard. When his career ended, he had 9 aircraft that he's a pilot of, a 10th, I believe, that you flew in today commercially. and the recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross. That's what we represent. That's the blood of the warrior that runs through us. Mr. Chapelis, he's proud of that picture right there. He's got his first stripe in Korea. He went on to earn 2 more as he is a sergeant when he left. And he served in Korea from the 60 to 62. Those are hard times, and he was a military policeman. Now, oftentimes in uniform as an infantryman, we always run from the police because we've probably done something wrong. But he served with distinction up there, and he was up there at Kimpo Air Base. That's about 20 kilometers right from the DMZ. Often, his whole sector was along that demilitarized zone right up there along with the North Koreans. That important strategic location on the peninsula is where he committed himself, and he served and earned his sergeant stripes. And beyond his military service, what you see from Mr. Steve is he poured his energy into the Greek-American community, committed to our heritage, and especially through the Greek Orthodox Church. And for many years, he served as a president of the St. Nicholas Church in Flushing, New York, where a Greek high school is named after he and his wife, a school named after him and his wife. And why is that important? Because at this school, they teach him how to read Greek, how to write, how to speak Greek, how to carry on the heritage of the blood that runs through his veins. That's the commitment, and he shares his ancestry and his history with all those in the community. These 3 men behind me, both in uniform and out, they reflect and they represent what it means of selfless service both in and out of uniform. As Mr. Andrew identified, as we stand at the World War II Memorial, you can take a look around. From Wisconsin, from Massachusetts, from New Mexico, everybody was committed to this fight. From one many. And it was in this fight, the bloodiest of all, you saw 405,000 men and women lose their life as they committed to the idea of what this country's about and its ideals. That's which we strive to attain. The liberty, the peace, justice, the equality. That's what this fight was about. And since we have lived here on American soil, we have fought for American soil. In every war, from the world wars to the Korean War to Vietnam to the current wars we've had in Iraq and Afghanistan, 20 years on. And I assure you this, the Greek Americans will continue to fight in our future wars. But I'd ask, what truly unites us across all these generations? What links the past to the present, forward into the future? It is something that bonds us together, and it runs through our veins, and it's imprinted in our DNA. It truly is our values. And there are Greek values that echo through time and permeate the American culture. Honor, integrity, duty, pride, dignity. As I say these words, I hear them in my father's voice resonating in my ears, as I hear in all of yours as we grew up. These are the foundations, not only of our family, but of this country. These are the same values that gave Metaxas on that day the ability to say Ochi for his nation and for his countrymen. The same values that shaped the service of Angelo, Peter, Steve, and Tim behind me. These values are powerful, they're immortal, and they truly are the bedrock of our heritage. But there's one virtue that I want to hide out that stands above the rest. It's a Greek word that is so nuanced and densely packed with meaning that there actually isn't an English translation. Philotimo. Philotimo. A uniquely Greek word. It's a word that describes a way of life, a love of family, a love of country, and it's a spirit of doing what is honorable, even at great risk to yourself. To live not just for yourself, but to live and commit yourself to a higher cause. I'll tell you that our nation's military is built on that philosophy of Philotimo. And you need it. You truly need it for the fights that we've had, because it can be a tough journey. We've just concluded 2 decades of service in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we're reminded that despite how long and trying the war can be, that they will also eventually end. But also, unfortunately, there will be more battles. Because even as we do our best to avoid sending our men and women into harm's way, there is another fight on the future. Because the great historian T.R. Fehrenbach describes us, how the lives we lead and the liberties that we enjoy, that they truly are not free. And his quote is, if the free nations want a certain kind of world, they're going to have to fight for it. They fight for it with courage, money, diplomacy, and legions. And our American legions are truly special. We draw from the entire globe, the swaths of humanity. And if you're from here, you, your family, your ancestors, they've been immigrants at one point or another. Just as my father and your family have risked everything for a better life and the promise of opportunity. You rise and fall based on your competence, on your skills, on your knowledge, and your merits. And you're judged by the content of your character. Nothing else. The content of your character. And whether you have some Greek heritage or not, here, with our differences, they're not weaknesses, but they're our strengths. That, to me, is Philotimo. To respect one another, to protect our shared way of life, and to selflessly serve and commit ourselves to others and the betterment of others. That's who we are. I want to thank you for the reception when I came and the opportunity to discuss not only these three great men that we're honored today, but the concept of Philotimo. I want to tell you, gentlemen, congratulations. Thank you for incredible service. And we owe you a debt of gratitude. I'm proud to be able to share the stage with you. Thank you very much.